So number 482 of WPwatercooler, Gutenberg. It's complicated.
It's complicated.
I'm Jason Tucker. I have a website, jasontucker.blog. You can go take a look at it.
Can and should. I'm Say Reed. I am at Say Reed Media on most of the things. Even the things shouldn't be on.
And y'all know who it is. It's your boy Jason Cosper back at it again on the world's most influential monkey paw of a WordPress podcast.
And speaking of that, go find us wherever it is you can find great podcasts. And come hang out with us in our Discord at watercoolerslack.lol.
Love our Slack. Love our Slack. It's so good. He got me with monkey paw, Cosper, right off the bat. He just started it right away.
Yeah.
I have two things to just say about just the moment before we move into the topic.
Can a third one be introducing Courtney?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hi.
We should do that first. I just kind of launched right into it. You're right. Our esteemed guest with us today is none other than friend of the show, good friend of the show, and Rolodex memory of the show, Courtney Robertson.
Yay!
Hey, friends. Can I tell you about Say's thoughts about the media library dating back to the first year of the show?
She could probably recite you know what's funny is I was about to say you could recite my evolving take on it, but it hasn't changed because the media library hasn't changed. Okay. This is not about the media library.
Moving on.
I do want to say two things. One, I have a Pusheen cup today. For those of you who cannot see, I always have this cup, but I remembered when I just got here why I don't use it is because it's only the back of the cup facing the other person. I don't get this. Like, is it a left-hander's person cup? It's for left-handed people. I'm going to be trying to drink with my left hand today over the microphone. So if I clonk, I apologize. So
Tucker's holding a mug from WordCamp Ventura.
Yep.
It's a mason jar with a handle. Cosper brought some
Mountain Dew Zero.
Juice to the show, and I am drinking a creamy root beer Zevia stevia sweetened soda.
This
all
totally
sponsored, by the way. All sponsored.
Remember that old show that used to be on where they would talk about their drinks all the time? No, I don't remember it either. Okay. Shoot. Has anyone done the double thumbs down? Because I just discovered what it does. I don't know if I discovered this week what it does. Anyway,
we'll save it for later in the show.
Yeah, I won't do it now. But I wanted
Our
to say,
audio people are so lost.
Speaking of your Ventura mug, I'm wearing my WordPress 20th anniversary sweatshirt because half my wardrobe is WordPress stuff, and along with my ongoing WordPress existential crisis is a wardrobe shift out. But this is a really comfortable sweater. But today I was reflecting on how it is WordPress birthday time again.
Oh yeah.
And I was thinking how different this year is than last year, and I just thought that was interesting. That's all. It was just a nostalgic thought I thought I'd share with folks about last year and our 20th anniversary project and our high hopes and this year how dashed they've been.
It's WordPress is going to be old enough to drink, and boy do we all need it.
And they could pay for
It
their own
has
drink.
been in most countries not named USA for 3+ years.
Yeah,
most
but
countries I think do like beer and cider at 16 and liquor at 18 or something
WordPress
like that.
was born here in the US, so I feel like it's a citizen and like 21's a big deal. Look, it's delayed most of the other adolescent stages. So let's hope in 4 more years.
Complicated?
Frontal lobe stabilizes a little.
It's complicated.
Exactly. That's where I'm going with this. It's complicated. No. So really, the reason I thought we should have friend of the show, Ms. Courtney Robertson, on today is because there was so much discussion from that stemmed really from a single tweet, a single sad, resigned.
Almost 87,000 views now.
Is it 70,000?
87 almost.
Oh, I'm sorry, 87,000.
87,000 people.
Yeah, how many likes? Because it had a lot of likes. Does anyone check that
Um,
ratio?
Should we
The
share the message that you're referring to on the
Yes.
screen?
So, longtime contributor Ari, who I've not met, but Courtney, you have.
Yeah, Ari's
Sopolis?
great. Yeah, Ari.
Tweeted that he gives up. It's just this is just so like the captures the zeitgeist of the moment right now. It is unbelievable.
So let
anyway,
me give a little
yeah, you
background
want to
on
recite it?
Ari.
Please do.
Yeah, Ari is, so folks know about this, Ari is the one that took lead originally on the font library API work. So if you go through core posts and you look at that, Ari was the one contributing to that. Ari is a longtime Yoast contributor, was specifically at Yoast, the company, in core for quite some time, doing a good bit of work, I believe, on Gutenberg, not just font library APIs. And I got a chance to meet Ari at WordCamp EU last year. Yeah, last year.
WordCamp EU
briefly.
like
and yeah, now that we're past pandemic, there's been a couple of WordCamp Europes that I've gotten a chance to be at. And so I got to meet Ari there. And Ari also is now working for Mr. Yoast, not Yoast the company, but Mr. Yoast as in through Amelia Capital, and is sponsored that way. So Ari wrote a tweet that says, I give up. I can no longer contribute to Gutenberg. I can't understand our code anymore. At this stage, it's alien to me, and it keeps getting more complex instead of simpler. I'm wasting too much time trying to understand what we do.
Yeah. And you said he's been working on the font API. It's not like he's coming in fresh to any of this. Ari has been working on this stuff. Yeah, elbows deep for quite some time. And imagine how hard things are for a new contributor when longtime contributors are like, I don't get any of this.
Yeah. So I believe Ari had just taken several months away from, at least Gutenberg might have taken that time away from contributing. So let's assume that within the last 3 months,
and had amnesia. And
I think he probably still knows a good bit of React. I don't think he's lost the knowledge of the programming language.
Right.
There's a couple of factors that we could dig into about what Ari's main points are. A super short summary, and we can then let this evolve into seeing how the community responded. A super short summary is that let's say that you just came back from an extended vacation or a sabbatical, or whatever your reason is for being out for a little while.
Here.
And you come back and you start digging in. Your skills as a dev might be fractions of a second a little slow because you've been away for a bit, which is fine. But now it's time to get back in and get up to speed. And so what do you need? You need to know what file that you want to open. So that was part one of this big issue, is locating which file, because we have more and more dependencies, or what is the right word that I'm looking for, Casper, about when we have abstractions,
like Russian stacking dolls. I think it's the events calendar method of building out, where you just put one line in each file.
WordPress core version.
Right.
So as part of, and just to kind of give folks a little bit of background on this, like the level and layer of things that need to be installed in order to make Gutenberg run, in order to develop Gutenberg, in order to test Gutenberg, like, you have Node.js, for the people who are like watching and listening, who aren't developers. You can have Node.js like install all of your dependencies for you, and like it'll just be like, hey, well, I guess it's time to go make a pot of coffee, because I'm gonna wait for the next 10 minutes while Node.js like installs all this stuff. I do some work with the WordPress hosting team, and The whole thing, like when setting up a test environment, like the test runner that WordPress hosts run, I mean, running an individual, like one of those tests every time that there's a code change, which is what that project does, those individual test runs can go for 10 to 20 minutes, depending on what needs to be, installed and run to like test those code changes. It's a lot.
Yeah. Update NPM. Great, you have issues. Update NPM. But it's more than that. It is also in that, if someone says, oh, it's this one line of code, that's great. It's only one line of code. But where do you find that one line of code? Well, it's in this area, but because of abstractions, you have to dig another layer deeper, another layer deeper, another layer deeper over to this other place to find the thing. So that's step one. But how do you find your way around this maze? Devs use inline documentation for that purpose. But we're not doing a lot of the inline documentation as it would be along the way. Not saying we're not doing any. We're not doing what would have helped Ari to avoid feeling the way that he feels if you read into more of the messages around what Ari has shared. So we're not doing the inline documentation that would point people to why this is doing this. Where is the place that this is dependent on? And so it's making it harder for people that are even skilled in React to find the thing that they need to find to test fixing that one issue. So that's part of all of this.
Okay, so obscurity in general of the actual code structure is one thing, but I think one of the other big things, tech in general is always like it's this giant river and it's streaming, and if you get out of it, say, I don't know, to have a child or to take care of a relative or take a break, take a vacation, a lot of things, or like another contributor, serve in a war, get drafted into a war and then come back and try to figure out how PHP has changed. Like the tech river moves, right? And the important thing has always been in tech across the board, whether it's like custom made stuff or large systems, is that people will be able to understand what they're looking at, right? And so if someone cannot leave for 2 to 3 months or 6 months, what that really means to me is that perhaps it's documentation. And speaking as a fan of change logs, I see a variety of change logs, and understanding the difference between one line of change this thing and an explanation of what actually changed, so you can get a real sense of how the different versions have evolved. It makes a huge difference in even being able to understand if those changes apply to the code that you're dealing with. I have, if I haven't used a plugin in a while, I try to go in and read the change log and be like, okay, what features have they added? What fixes have they added? Because maybe I had to do a workaround before for something else. And if I can't read that change log to understand what's happening, it's like I have to start all over again on even just with a plugin. But
I would say though, I just want to share that I was thinking about, well, what's the changelog of Gutenberg as you're talking? And it basically tells you to go over and look at stuff in GitHub. What I would actually point to is just dropped into our show chat here, the link to the Gutenberg 18.2 release, and that functions in that way a bit. When I think about the changelogs and how I would turn those at the events calendar into actual release content for the customers that are developers to read and understand what just changed, that does exist. So I don't want to say that it's not, it's that inline documentation is really the issue, because we saw a message from Riyadh that came out. So yeah, we have Damien's leading on this 18.2 release, which is great. Damien's a DevRel at WP Engine. And so we see, here's the information of what just changed in Gutenberg 18.2. For those that need some clarification, for plugin, is released every other week, pretty much like clockwork. And all of those features after, when we get close to the next core release, the features that are out in the published version of the Gutenberg plugin get merged to core for the next big release. And that's kind of the way that this works. So people can run bleeding edge Gutenberg. People could run the Gutenberg plugin and test it. That's not really what Ari's issue is seeing from this side of it. What Ari's issue is in the code.
Right. Well, I mean, so here's the thing. That's nice, but if you have that level of documentation and change happening every 2 weeks, it doesn't really matter how amazing your documentation is. Plus, there's two things here. One, the people reading the Gutenberg changelog, whatever it is, what's new in Gutenberg, that's not customers. That's not users. That's not even WordPress developers who are building sites for people. That is literally core developers. So maybe, do we need the designy one with here's, your logo and all that stuff that we do for that? Here's the new version of WordPress. Here's the pretty headers and all that to show you the stuff. I don't even know if that's what's important. I would love to see some statistics on those being written. If that's not helpful to someone who is actually working on the code, then I'm not really sure who it's helpful to, because I'm not reading that, because whatever goes into Gutenberg is going to get pulled into WordPress, and then I'm going to read that iteration of it, because that is the iteration that's going to impact my work and what I'm working on. So going to speaking of abstraction, going out to the level of Gutenberg, that definitely is going to apply to plugin developers primarily, I would say, right? So that they can kind of see what's coming down the pike. But what I've heard from every single plugin developer that I've ever talked to about this is that it is impossible to keep up with the level of change that is happening, no matter how it's presented. If it's not documented well, inline code, if it's being presented in a nice post, whatever it is, releasing so much information every 2 weeks and having extreme rapid code iteration it's really hard to keep up. That is a whitewater, fast moving river. And if you get out of that river, it is going to be a mile down the bank before you've even, walked to your car.
So I am with you a little bit there. However, the inline documentation, and this is where developers get tripped up. It's basically you are being asked to decipher what the hell this code does. You are basically instead of walking around a neighborhood with clear street signs and signs on the buildings of what everything is, you're just thrown into dirt roads, no signs, and you've kind of maybe got a map, but it's a hand-drawn map, and you only sort of know the area, so you're wait, is this the right road that I'm turning on? What
is that, a street or an alley? I can't tell.
Am I going the right way here? What is, and you might have to backtrack. You might have to having documentation in the actual code, which is a thing that because Gutenberg specifically has been moving so aggressively and adding all of these new features, trying to basically get to the place where page builders, all the various page building plugins out there, the ones that pave the way, the Beaver builders, the Divi, Elementor, etc., that have a one up on some of the usability.
They have 5 years.
Yeah, they have so much. Yeah, they have
trying to make up for 5 years of not being there, right? And get just cram it all in. I really feel that is absolutely what it feels like.
It is irresponsible though to be like, hey, we're going to build all of these new features and we are going to go ahead and add this, and oh, look at this cool new thing we're doing, and everything else, and just it's, to me, it's irresponsible to have poorly documented code in there where a developer who you want to keep building the future versions of this thing that you were trying to build, to basically not at least stick up a road sign saying like, hey, that thing you're looking for, like, go this way, or here is what this little bit of code does, or what it's supposed to do, so you don't spend a shitload of time trying to figure out, like, am I on the right path, or am I just chasing waterfalls.
So Nick here,
Nick's comment there. Go ahead,
yeah,
say.
So he's saying the inline docs explain decisions that have already been made, right? I actually really disagree with that. I do not think that is what inline docs should be doing. That has nothing to do with decisions. Inline docs are labeling things, just like what Costa was saying. Like, these are signs and explanation, not explanations of decisions. Just like yesterday, I was changing a Google API, right? And I sticking stuff in my functions. I'm like, this is the Google API for this particular maps thing. Like, I explained what it was. So if someone's looking through there, they'll be like, oh, what's this, Google API code for? Well, look, I just told you it's right there. It says nothing about, why we're using that API or what the decision process was for that API. It's just saying, this is what this is that is here. And I kind of disagree that inline docs should explain decisions. I don't think that's something that belongs in documentation. I just think it's about labeling and explaining what is happening in the code.
I don't know that we want to split hairs too much on if it's like explaining a decision about why a file points over to somewhere else or not. Just that here is why this is abstracted and where you can go for the rest of it. To that end, in terms of other documentation, can we show Riyad's message? So Riyad saw this, and Riyad is one of the Gutenberg, I don't know his technical title, but he is full-time in Gutenberg working on things. And so during all of this conversation taking off,
sponsored contributor.
Yes.
Sponsored by
Automatic.
Okay, just checking.
So Riyad said, hey, you don't understand something on Gutenberg's Codebase, leave a reply to this thread and we'll try to do my best to clarify it. So again, I'm assuming Riyad may not be English first. This could be interpreted in two ways. It could be, oh, I see that we have some people that are confused, and so I'm trying to be helpful. Or it could be seen as tailspin of, no, this way is correct. And so we have a couple of related things. So also a former guest on the show, Triple J, John James Jacoby, who is a longtime core contributor, chimed in on Riyad's message and said, why don't you document? That doesn't sound like he's interpreting it as Riyad being helpful. It sounds like JJJ was sort of indicating you're trying to control the story and say that you made the right decisions along the way. As you look through a lot of Riyad's, one of Jay's posts, Triple J's post says, asking for feedback and then just defending yourself is the best way to waste everyone's time. So there's a lot of ways that this could go. And so if you look through Riyad's messaging, he points to already published dev docs and already created resources on Learn WP, which are helpful and good, except that let's look at this chain. We have inline documentation, then we get to the release posts that I shared, one from Core. I'm the audience that looks at the Core release posts to help assess what in Learn needs to be updated, or does the docs team, like, we're the audience of receiving that information so that we know all of the things that need to get updated. Also, for people that are testing Gutenberg thoroughly, like I run the Gutenberg plugin on my site. I do read these types of things, and it helps me get things ready for releases. The inline documentation is for the devs that are actively building, that their main role is to build Gutenberg. And so when inline documentation isn't right, of course, it's going to be hard for an experienced person that just took some time off, but it's also going to be even that much harder for the occasional contributor to find the one little thing. How much more do they have to search if they are just even an occasional contributor?
I mean,
not
I
even
think
a like
occasional
frequent.
contribution impossible. And, you know, one might argue, maybe I wouldn't argue, but one might argue that that could be intentional, because
Yeah.
you know, there's been a lot of discussion about the marketing team, the WordPress marketing team, which is being disbanded. I don't know if, you know, we haven't really talked about that on the show. It's a bit of an emotional topic for me. But there continues to be an extensive amount of marketing work for WordPress.org, the open source project, that does not happen on WordPress.org properties. And when one considers that the predominant number of full-time Gutenberg developers are in fact sponsored by the same company, and one has seen the evidence and the behavior that shows that discussions do happen on repositories and in Slacks that are not open to non-employees, one might then begin to wonder if perhaps that documentation exists even, or if those explanations and that discussion is happening. It's just not happening within the WordPress project itself. And so for the full-time folks working on it who are sponsored by Automatic, perhaps they do not need to have that level. And answering questions in a Twitter feed, in a Twitter thread, which seems like a really wildly bizarre place to address inline documentation, that almost seems patronizing. You know, like, it's not just like, oh, you have a problem, let me help you. It's not like he was asking for, like, you know, help figuring out some resources to learn how to code properly, right? Like, he was making a fundamental observation about the patterns and the state of the actual code base and the ability of people who are not automaticians to contribute. And, you know, I gotta say, it's not great, because Gutenberg is not even really within the WordPress open source project sphere. It's not. It is, but it isn't. It exists sort of in this gray area of, you know, not like maybe being bigger than WordPress, right? And Matt Mullenweg, co-founder of WordPress project, has talked about this, right? He's talked about how he thinks Gutenberg will be bigger than WordPress. We've talked about it on the show. Gutenberg is used by Drupal. So
actually, I just saw a post from Dries, founder of Drupal, this past week, and they're talking about the next iteration. They call theirs instead of calling it like a page builder or something, they call it like the layout builder. Which I thought was interesting. And they're at a decision-making process point right now in the Drupal project about moving that forward. I mean, right now, I'm not sure that Gutenberg is fully integrated into their layout builder, but I think that they're looking at either a more complete adoption of Gutenberg, or there is a competitor to that one, Plasmic, I think was the name of it. There's a couple I just saw on his post. So Dries has a recent post. If you've heard of Dries, you can find his blog and read about that. But I thought it was pretty interesting that there's still in that, should we fully adopt it or not? How should we do this? And to that, and I don't know if we have it too handy here in the links of tweet conversations that went on, but I shared one that my coworker Drew James, longtime core committer, had also
this
posted.
got interesting.
Yeah, so Drew and I know each other. We don't work in the same department. Occasionally we chat. Both of us are voices in the Twitter space that are from our own experience of contributing to WordPress and not representing our employer. I say this because we then both got into a conversation in this thread that kind of works with Matt. So Drew's post here, a lot of standards and practices for WordPress core development relaxed around 5.0 to allow for easier iteration and innovation in the Gutenberg project. After 7 years of development, isn't it time to reprioritize those standards? Matt did respond in this one, kind of asking for some clarification, and Drew iterated about the 80-20 rule of 80% of the users.
The 80-20 rule. I want to talk about that some more.
Let's bring that back. Also, let's do inline documentation. Let's make sure that we're accessible by default. Those type of points. And I thought that they were pretty solid. It also got into a side conversation that stemmed out of all of this. That I saw Jordan participate in as well, and I thought points were handled. I will say, I think that as we're seeing all of this conversation unfold, people have handled it very factual and responsibly. I feel like, I mean, would I have liked
a bunch of hardcore
messaging to come across?
Wait, it's a bunch of hardcore devs talking about inline documentation and inline document, which is amazing, first of all, but like inline documentation is kind of a long-standing contentious point within developers world and lore anyway, just because you know it's always been like, do you document your code properly? Like, how do you document your code? Like, and so I mean, I think
some of the side convo I wanted to kind of point out with Matt there though was that the conversation evolved somewhere between Drew, Jordan, and I kind of jumped in a little bit on it too. Was what are we doing about like core leads? There used to be core leads like Mason and Helen and a few others, and there's a page in the core handbook about some of this. These are now seen primarily as historical roles, and Matt made mention to having a variety of non-automaticians named as release leads. People were then asking for clarification about that, and then Matt kind of responded that he views release leads as the people that are in the noteworthy contributor. There was like a photo of 4 faces in there of who Matt would deem as the release leads. And so I basically was just asking for, can we update the page in the core handbook, and can we be consistent then in how we show this in the about page? You know, like, I'm not making a huge issue out of some of these side parts of the conversation.
It's all
there's
connected.
Side conversations related to the Gutenberg conversation too.
Yeah, because you know what?
It's all fair requests.
Yeah, but this is the same. This is the same problem. Exactly what Drew and, to be honest, Ari is asking for is, and I hate to say this word, it's governance. It doesn't even have to be governance that isn't the project. Like, it's not external. It's just policies. Having policies that people know about and that we follow. That's what it is. That's all that, like, governance doesn't have to be this like political revolution, like, you know, come for blood kind of deal. That's really not what it's supposed to be about. This is the project. These are its policies. These are what we do. You know, like when WordPress is in violation of its own stated philosophies, like, no one knows what to do with this. Like, we don't know where to put it in our brains. And I think that is what is causing the current level of said aforementioned existential crisis, because that 80-20 rule, which I have checked, is still on the website and maybe now no longer will be there. I'll just get disappeared off the internet. I've checked it a few times, the about page on the .org site, just to see if it's been, you know, being disappeared slowly but surely. But the 80-20 rule, which is that the things that should be in core should be useful and used by 80% of the users. And there have been some wild things put into core, like, I don't know, let's just pick an uncontroversial one, like duotone, that have not, like, there's no...
Post formats is the most known one of them all.
Which one?
Post formats.
Okay, but post formats.
So the people in the back can hear you.
That was probably way before an 80-20 rule even existed. And second of all, the post formats could be used by 80. You know what I mean? Like, because of just the variation of the post formats, it could be used by 80%. There's no way that 80% of a website builder market is all going to use the same design choice on an image. Like that's just preposterous. Like that is literally bonker sauce. 80%. Okay, this is what it says. Rule of thumb. That's interesting. I don't know that it said that before, but maybe it did. The rule of thumb is that the core should provide features that 80% or more of end users will actually appreciate and use. That's close enough to what I remember it as to not contest it, but I don't know if that applies to duotone. I certainly don't think it applies to things like the footnote block. But
I don't think the title of that header, clean, lean, and mean, even applies to. I mean, think about the conversation we're having.
Yeah,
right
we're
now.
like, it's not clean, mean, and lean. Like, this is the problem. We are not living up to our own values, our own stated in all areas of the project, and that includes Gutenberg. Like, if Gutenberg is meant to be open and we're going to have all these people contributing to it, and it's even bigger than WordPress because it's this revolutionary block editor that you can use everywhere, why on earth would we be making it more and more obscure? Like, there is no explanation for that is aligned with our stated values and policies as a project. Like, does not compute.
Now, okay, I'll ask this for all of us because we've been around a while, but I'll specifically ask Courtney, and I'm not. You can say pass on this if you want to, but do you feel that some of the less commented code that would be going into some WordPress components today would have made it into an earlier version of WordPress, say 3.0, 4.0, any of those branches? Do any of you feel like if somebody turned around and put in a patch, that they wouldn't get it just thrown back in the track ticket if it was not documented?
I don't know about Courtney after that. Sorry. Go ahead.
Love you, say. I'm thinking about one. This is not necessarily going back to pre Gutenberg, but even during the Gutenberg release cycle, I just saw that Aruba shared a message recently. That Aruba's message was, "Oh, look, somebody else besides me submitted an idea for duplicate post.
Yep.
I had done so 2 years ago and got declined."
Yep.
Now, in this case, the person that submitted it to have a duplicate post button available so that if you want to clone your post, you can easily do so. The person is employed by Automatic. I've already internally raised the issue I've raised to an internal automatician to say, red flag, I see that here is where Aruba already originally logged the idea. And I've seen that Anne has recently commented on Aruba's logged idea within the past day. I called out that when I shared this with somebody that I trust that is an Automatic employee, to say, this doesn't help the look of things. When folks are calling this out, I said, this doesn't, when you see a man at Automatic submit the very same idea, and now it's already in line to be shipped into 6.6. That's certainly not helpful. Whether that was intentional or not, we need to recognize that the idea Aruba had logged 2 years ago is related to this in the process of that. And so why is it now easier to do as opposed to 2 years ago in Gutenberg? Why was it declined when Aruba submitted it? Is it a sponsored, unsponsored, a gender thing? In this case, I'm reluctant to think that there was any cultural, racial ideas to this, just because I don't know this particular automatician employee, but he doesn't strike me as like being a typical North American white dude getting his way.
Right.
Sorry, Tucker and Cosper, but yeah, there's that. So I don't think
No,
it's
it's fine.
a racial issue, but I do see it as maybe a sponsored, unsponsored, and possibly a gender issue in terms of initial perception of Aruba's message versus what's getting shipped. I could be mistaken, but I share those concerns with the people that I trust to make sure that Aruba does get credited on this, and to say this is not helpful for the look of what we see happening in Gutenberg while everything's being called out right now. This is not a benefit to saying we're listening and we care, is to pick
I
your
mean,
own staff
screw
members'
listening
stuff.
and we care. How about we are open and we accept contributions from people just like we say we do, because we're an open source
Right.
project, instead of being a complete elitist gate-kept thing that's only available to more and more full-time sponsored employees from one company.
Right. Yeah,
Ding.
there's that.
There's that. Yeah, I really think it has a, there is no way that there is at all times a gender role, not a gender role thing, but like a gender disparity at play, and that really is prevalent just in every interaction, especially within suggestions and tech forums like this. So 100% that. But in terms of why this feature is suddenly useful and an automatician might be jumping in there and popping it in, that has to me a lot more to do with WordPress.com and what it's trying to be to its users.
Going back to the less Calypso interface.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
more to the native org interface.
Right, which means that it is going to try to be, that the software needs to be better. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
And things like duplicating post, which definitely 80% of users might use and find useful, versus, say, I don't know, again, duotone. The idea that is now useful to Automatic/WordPress.com, and that is why its prioritization is happening. That to me makes more sense than anyone even thought about Aruba's what had been happening. Like the likelihood that they were like, I don't think in this case it was like, let's steal that idea or anything. It was just like we need this feature now, so we're just going to go ahead and put it in there, because it's really these issues and these discussions that emerge on the public open source repos. A lot of them feel like they have been previously discussed. I know that's definitely the case for a lot of the quote unquote proposals that get put out by some groups, like, for example, the Media Core proposal that was put out by the director of the project, Josefa, who just put onto the marketing blog that the marketing team was changing, and this was a proposal, but a proposal that's not a proposal because it's a proposal that's happening and had been in discussion apparently and whatever, but not discussed with the team, not discussed openly, and now is being posted for comments and feedback, but not really, because it's already happening. So again, I'm pulling that back to, there is a discussion happening that is not being documented. And so whether the decisions might be being documented in the core posts, the what's new in Gutenberg, they're not being documented in the inline documentation, because even the things aren't even being labeled in the inline documentation. But I don't think that it's I do think that it is the same problem in both areas. I think that this is systemic, and I think that the number of people running up against this wall of where are these conversations happening and who's making these decisions and who's driving the train that we're on, that's what we all keep hitting up against. And you know what, when you hit up against that and you're like, well, I can't get any further, the next car is locked, so I can't see who's driving the locomotive, you know what happens? You get off the train. That's what happens. And I think that is a intentional feature and not a bug. And I think that all of us want to approach it as if it's a bug, and we want to fix it, and we want to say, hey, here's all the ways we could do this better. But if the goal is not, in fact, to do that better, then maybe we are all just wasting our time, like J Trip said.
So many big thoughts and feelings. It's been a week of like
WordPress 21. In the house. Sorry.
Mhm. It's a lot to think through and to sort of weigh. And so my comment to the original message Ari put out is, okay, we've had this many views on your message. How do we, can we, at this point, because it got so much coverage, can we take that back to the official spaces and see any actionable change come out of this? And I'm still stewing on that thought.
Me looking around. Oh no, I don't see any. But I'm here anyway, so I guess I have some sort of like vain hope that with enough of us speaking up, with enough of the ecosystem, that, let's be real, this is not a one company ecosystem, okay? As much as some of us might like to think that it is not. That is, I actually looked it up recently. WordPress is I believe it's $567 billion ecosystem. Anyone?
Wow.
Number, folks. And you know what? That's not all one company. As much as that one company wants to think that it's all them. So, I guess there is a political revolutionary message. First of all, there's more of us than there are of them, maybe, because, I don't know. And also, hired soldiers are never as good as soldiers who are volunteering out of passion. That's all I'm saying. So it's up to us, right? We all see the writing on the wall, or the lack of writing in the documentation, the lack of writing on the code, we should say. And we all know that it's there. We're all reading these tweets. We all see the same thing.
Do you guys feel that the idea of this is that because of the fact that Gutenberg is doing what it's doing, that people have then continued on and probably even doubled and tripled down on alternative page builders and stuff like that, where those are still prevalent, and it's just like, we're still using Divi, we're still using Beaver Builder, we're still using this, we're still using that, and they're like, oh yeah, but when I write a blog post, I accidentally use Gutenberg to write it.
I mean, I for all my client sites, even ones where I'm using other page builders, I'm using the block editor on posts. It just, because the block editor is great for styling text layout, right? It's better than a Word doc. It's better than Google, right? A Google Doc for laying out a document or a page. But that is different from abstracting again into an entire site. Those are, that's a more philosophical discussion about the site editor in general. But I think, Gutenberg is on its own track. It is on its own train. It is being run fast and hot and quick. And WordPress is just gulping it down. Like literally whatever Gutenberg shoves in, WordPress is taking. And that sounded really way more odd than I intended it to for me. But like, that's what's happening. Like, there's been this ongoing discussion with every release. It's like, oh, which version of the latest Gutenberg are we going to put in here? And it's like, oh, we're taking this latest version or this latest version? And there have been multiple problems with releases that are probably connected to that, with the 0.1, 0.2 thing being skipped. Like, I feel like I don't know, maybe there's not a connection there, but I feel like there's a connection there in terms of the input level of Gutenberg at the very last minute that has definitely derailed multiple releases for WordPress, because something that is brand new in Gutenberg broke. I mean, like, but the policy is to put the absolute latest cutting edge version that comes out, like in like something nuts, like at the release candidate 1 or something. Like that, like that's when they're like, okay, now we won't take in any new Gutenberg code. Like, what? Are you wild? Like, that's why they've added extra betas. Gutenberg new code coming hot off the printer and then just being just sucked right in, like without any time for processing or even testing properly.
Yeah,
Brian
Court's
absorption into the project or quote unquote discussion.
Yeah, Brian Court's has been very eager to call out. And for the audio listeners, my dog has joined the show. She has a little white Maltipoo, and she's sitting on my lap so that she doesn't bark at the neighbors getting a delivery of something. I don't know. So Brian Quartz has been calling out, let's do a full release that solely focuses on polish and improvements, that doesn't add new features. That, what if we do a release where the whole point is to improve inline documentation and accessibility, adding no new features, just continuing to improve these areas of the project that we know we absolutely need to tweak further. And that idea is starting to get a little more traction, but we also understand why that is hard to do. And contributors be contributors. They will pick and choose what they wish to work on. Sometimes that is true when you are both sponsored and unsponsored. If you are wildly passionate about post formats, the way that Cosper and I are, and you decide you want to get post formats working with the block theme, okay, well, off you go. Go ahead, contribute, and when it's ready, it will. But I also see the value in saying, we're going to take a couple releases and just focus on inline docs, accessibility, the things that we're all crying out for, to have those specific areas to improve. And I think if we did that, we would lose news cycle hype about how great WordPress is, potentially, but we would get internal, in the community, influencer bubble people to say, wow, this is so helpful, so beneficial. And I would love to see that type of thing come from this situation, where maybe we do really look inwardly and not ship more features, not rush onto phase 3 Gutenberg dashboard, media library, all the things. Gutenberg's coming for the rest of WordPress, and we know that, but let's not leave it so that eventually all of WordPress is Gutenberg and all of WordPress is missing inline documentation and is not accessible. We can't have that as an editing experience. We can't have that as a developer experience.
I'm sorry, we have that right now, just to frame it out. So we do not want to keep that, is what that is. Sorry.
We don't have it for everything. So for instance, we still have the classic editor plugin available, and it helps people that have need of screen readers, especially. They can have an accessible experience by installing the classic editor and writing posts that way. It's an option. It's not a good option. A lot of the other parts of WordPress core's code that is not a Gutenberg experience, I'm venturing to guess, although I should do my homework and go read and look, I'm guessing that there is some more additional pointers in the inline documentation for folks in non-Gutenberg parts of WordPress right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would be nice to have everyone. I think that is maybe the intention that I've heard expressed from Josepha in the past. Although the problem is, last year, the polish episode, or polish release, which, by the way, polish is not the same. Polishing features is not the same thing as a release that focuses on documentation and, accessibility and ensuring that contributors are, being kept up to date. Like that, those are not the same thing. But last year for the 6.4 release, it was both touted as the underrepresented contributor release and the polishing release. So that was really bad. Well, again, maybe intentional, maybe not. Where we're like, oh, we're not going to work on as many new features because maybe we don't want underrepresented contributors to be weighing in on those features as much. I don't know. There's some more gatekeeping for you, but the gatekeeping is real, and it happens in all.
Asking underrepresented people, especially specifically female representing, presenting folks, to clean shit up. Come on.
I got so upset about that. I was like, really? This is a clean and polished one for the,
Yeah.
and at that point we were calling it, I think we ended up calling it women and non-binary, or it was at that point. And I was like, the women and non-binary release squad is focusing on cleaning and polishing. That's great. Cool.
And
glad we thought about that.
To rewind for half a second to Courtney pointing out that basically people being told for better accessibility, you can install the classic editor and just use the classic editor. That's like saying, hey, I know that there are all of these sidewalks around here, and we have some folks who need curb cuts where the curb dips so they can get down. But just a little ways down, there's a driveway. You can just roll down that instead.
And then just be in the street for a minute. You'll be fine.
Right. No, curb cuts. Like make
Right.
everybody a first-class citizen, because eventually everybody is going to need accessibility. Everyone here, everyone listening, everyone watching is
all our old millennials are gonna need screen readers. Like, come on.
On a long enough timeline, you are going to need accessibility features too. Like, accessibility is coming for you. You are going to.
That would be an amazing t-shirt. Another t-shirt exclusive here at WordCamp.
Yeah, like, please, like.
Who are we? Water cooler. Jeez, Louise.
Start treating accessibility as
it's
first
only 11
class.
years.
Yeah,
it's only been 11 years. Say you're fine.
Yeah, you'll learn my name too eventually. That's good. We're doing well here. Anyway, we love you all, and I think it's been a long.
We could just call you another Jason, and that would simplify.
Yeah.
Everything.
I know, right?
It's her middle name.
It's Jason. I'm trying. All right, we gotta go. We love you. Hang out with us in our Slack. Thanks for coming on and talking.
Wait, what? What's the Slack
It's
address?
our water cooler Slack.lol.
Oh, there it is. Gotcha. I think I'll find my way over.
If you know, you know. Thanks for coming on and helping us dissect the complicated relationship status between Gutenberg and WordPress. And shout out to Prosper for the title, because I love it. As an elder millennial who existed in the relationship, it's not. I mean, at the time when Facebook had it, I didn't actually ever use it. Kind of wished I had, but you never know. I wish they had it now. It'd be better.
Poke.
Y'all have a good one.
Goodbye.
So go over to our website at WPwatercooler.com/subscribe to subscribe to this content right here. We'd really appreciate it. You can find us wherever it is that the internet has us post these things, and come hang out with us over there. We would appreciate it. If you like this stuff, subscribe. If you didn't like this stuff, then post about it on socials, because it's good. See y'all later.